First of all, welcome everybody who is watching here online, live worldwide on Facebook. Welcome everybody on board to tonight's class, and welcome to all of you guys here today. We have a lot of first-timers here, a lot of repeat customers, and Bezrat Hashem, I hope that tonight's Torah class should put a fire in your heart. Now, I will say, if you guys don't have a book, I think it's important that you either figure out a ways to share, like someone switch up to share if you don't have. This is a book text class. So if I need to start going through it and not really looking, it's a little harder. Just throwing it out there. Also, another important thing to note for all those that are here is that when it comes to Likutey Moharan, when you're going through a chapter, every chapter is a world. And it's a whole world of an intense amount of Torah and information. And the biggest, most important thing from that is when you're actually going through the actual Torah itself, right now you're literally in the 5th class of a long chapter, which means that we missed a certain amount of content from before. The good news is that really from today's class, you're almost learning like something new at the same time. So at the end of the day, it all evens out. So it's important to know that. But just know, to really appreciate Likutey Moharan, you go through the motion of a whole chapter. So you're jumping into the bottom of the 5th inning right now in the game. That's what it feels like. Okay. So now with that being said, also want to say a lot of people sending me a lot of messages regarding the video that was just released recently regarding the whole fire incident. And Baruch Hashem, I'm glad that a lot of people got a lot of strength from that, a lot of chizik from it. And Bezrat Hashem, like I said, for many people that watch it, you should use it, share it with other people. It makes you believe in Hashem. A lot of people go through life with lack of emunah, lack of faith, and sometimes you just don't see Hashem. And in my situation, my story, going through all the challenges and difficulties that I've gone through, Baruch Hashem, I'm able to give that off. So if you know somebody who might need the chizuk, send it to that person, send the link out, and Bezrat Hashem should be matzliach in helping many people. Tonight's class is dedicated in memory of Deborah Fega Bat Shmuel Zichrono Lebracha and Menachem Mendel ben Elchanan Zichrono Lebracha. So just a quick review before we actually start off the actual Torah. Now, pretty much I'll go very fast from where we started from till now. We're talking about 5 hours worth of Torah in 1 minute. So here we go. Rabbi Nachman begins and he talks about this idea. What does the delight of the world to come feel like? Right? Olam haba. And what he speaks about is the idea that when a person has knowledge of Hashem, da'at of Hashem. How do you have da'at of Hashem? He says, you want to get close to Hashem? Thank Him. Thank Him non-stop. When a person thanks Hashem, you're acknowledging Hashem. And by you acknowledging Hashem, you can get closer and closer to Him. And I know for many people that do personal private prayer with Hashem, and they do it on a constant level, on a daily level, their relationship to Hashem is a much different level than someone who is, let's say, checking in once in a while, to say the least. That's how he starts off. Then he says another way to get really close to Hashem is the idea of studying halacha. Halacha is learning the concept of Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is the idea of learning all the laws of how we do mitzvot. And by a person doing that, it's, as Rabbi Nachman showed very beautifully, he connects that idea, that it's the same idea as thanking Hashem. He talks about that in length. Then after that, he speaks about the idea about how important it is to give money to Torah scholars. And the idea that when a person gives money to a Torah scholar, the importance behind that in the Kabbalistic concept, you are the Netzach and the Hod, which is, to go through the charts right now, I'm not going to do all that right now, but basically you have to know that the Zohar says it's probably one of the highest levels. You sustain the world when you help Torah scholars out and you give them tzedakah. The last section that we spoke about dealt with the idea of the light of truth and how that emanates through speech. Meaning, he says that there's 4 different types of speeches, which we spoke about, and how Hashem has 3 different names. The name Yud-Kei Bat-Kei, the name Kel, and the name Elohim. These 3 names shine truth into 4 different types of speech. We spoke about this in length, and it is what it is, but now we're actually now going to be starting the actual content itself. Today's topic is going to be about Shabbat versus weekday. And I hope that after tonight's class, everybody can somehow, some way take that with themselves into Shabbat in a much higher level of machshava, of consciousness, because what we're going to be speaking about really is something that sometimes people forget. Okay, so we'll leave it like that. All right, for all those, here we go. Everybody have a book? You're following along? We are now on page 133, 132, if you have the black book. All right, and for you guys here on Zoom, we got you here hooked up. Okay, perfect. So Rabbi Nachman begins section 5, and he says like this. Ushleimot hadibur hu bechinat lashon hakodesh. We spoke about last week about the concept of perfected speech, shleimot speech, Hashem shining the light of truth inside of speech. So Rabbi Nachman says, you want perfected speech? It's this concept of the holy tongue, lashon hakodesh. What is lashon hakodesh? So lashon hakodesh normally is the actual Hebrew letters, right, that we find in the Torah, whether it's through actual learning the Torah, that's lashon hakodesh, or through praying. Lashon hakodesh also could be in English. I could be saying words of Torah, like as I'm speaking to you right now, and it's Torah, like I'm talking to you Torah. That is also lashon hakodesh. So he's saying this is that idea of perfected speech. It's through the holy tongue, through lashon hakodesh. So he continues and he says, because all the languages of the nations, basically everybody else that doesn't speak, so to speak, and I'm not talking about Hebrew either. I'm talking about, there's a difference between I'm speaking Hebrew and I'm speaking words of Torah. It's 2 separate things, 2 different things. So he says all the languages of the nations, they're lacking. They are imperfect. So he says, he calls them, and this is taking a pasuk from the book of Isaiah. He says they're imperfect and they're called the tongue of stammerers, is the wording. Perfection only applies to the holy tongue. So what is this concept of the tongue of stammerers? He gets that pasuk specifically. There's a very famous king named Achaz. Achaz was a terrible, terrible king. Shaya, who says about him that, like, pretty much he's not a good guy, all the people that are around him are not good people, and he calls those people that literally put down all the prophets and make them look bad, he calls them this concept of lashon ilgim, which means the tongue of stammers. The idea is very simple. If you're into idol worship, it's the opposite of lashon hakodesh. Okay, that's why he's calling it that. So now he talks about, and this is where we're going to talk about the main inyan of tonight. And Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, "Ulashon hakodesh hu mekushar l'Shabbat." And this concept of the holy tongue, this concept of the perfection of speech, that is connected with Shabbat. And he brings you a pasuk. He says, "V'daber dabar, shelo yeh diburech shel Shabbat kidburecha shel chol." So he says, regarding this idea that you're not allowed to speak about weekday matters, means, what does that mean? Meaning your conversations on Shabbat should not be like your weekday conversations. Now, originally when he's talking about this pasuk about nor speak of weekday matters and all that, in the Gemara, by the way, Rabbi Nachman, what he does, he's talking Gemara, Zohar, Tehillim, Chumash. He's bouncing around. He's just throwing you constant Torah in your face, okay? And he's using the whole Torah to prove a point to you, okay? So this idea, he says, this idea of holy tongue, and it's connected to the conversations that should not be like the weekday conversations. What is that all about? Meaning, when we are in Shabbat mode, it's a big, it is what it is. A lot of people like to talk about also other things that are not necessarily dealing with Lashon HaKodesh, right? Like who won that basketball game, or to something as simple as politics, to and again, on a worse level, the reality is if you're even speaking about work, right? So some people will talk to you about work during Shabbat. And you have to know that it's a serious thing. It's not just like you're ruining the spirit of Shabbat, but you're not even tapping into Kedusha mode. So the more that you talk about that, the more we are staying away from holiness, from what Shabbat really is all about, which is this idea of Kedusha and holiness, right? So then Rabbi Nachman, based on that, says, so he says, B'lshon HaKodesh. He says, look at this. You look at the English. He says, this is as in, thus shall you bless. Kol tebarechu. What is that from? In Masechet Sota, in the Gemara, it also talks about this idea. When the Kohanim bless you, are they allowed to bless you? Go, may God bless you and shine on you. No, they're not. They have to bless you in Lashon HaKodesh. Yibarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. When they say those three lines, when they say Kol tebarechu, right? That specific Kol tebarechu was an indicator, as they learned it out through the whole Gemara, showing you that the idea that blessing is connected with what? Holy tongue. Holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh. You can only bless somebody with Lashon HaKodesh. Rabbi Nachman continues based on that, and he says, Shel B'Lashon HaKodesh nichla bracha kedusha. Based upon that idea, the holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh, it's talking about what? Blessing and sanctity, right? Again, the idea when I'm blessing the Kohanim, we're blessing, talking about blessing and kedusha and holiness. Okay. Then he continues and he says, Ki Lashon HaKodesh mekusha l'Shabbat, because now Lashon HaKodesh, as we just said a second ago, is connected to what? To Shabbat. Shneimar bo bracha ukdusha, Moshe Katuv vaybarech vaykadesh. So what Rabbi Nachman right now is I'm going to read it to you in English, and I'm going to try to connect what he's trying to say. He says, Lashon HaKodesh deals with bracha and holiness. Shabbat deals specifically with the concept of being blessed and holy. How do we know that? Because we know specifically that in Breshit, it says, Vaybarech, Vaykadesh. What is that from? If you look at the actual pasuk, right? Vaybarech, Yom HaShvi, right? The actual Kiddush, right? When we say that, in that specific language, it says Vayibarech, it says the word in there, and it says Vayikadesh. Vayikadesh, Oto, right? So those two words, which we read it, where do we read it from? We read it from Breshit. Shabbat specifically deals with God blessed it, bracha, and sanctified it, Kodesh. So there we go. So now Rabbi Nachman, a very important lesson. How do we learn Rabbi Nachman? He's doing concepts and we're doing plug and plays. So work with me. We have Kedusha, holiness, Lashon HaKodesh. Then he says, Shabbat, we just learned that Shabbat has in it bracha and Kedusha. Same thing as Lashon HaKodesh, right? So now we're connecting Shabbat with Lashon HaKodesh. Does that make sense? Would you need me to repeat that one more time?
So when we maintain Lashon HaKodesh during the week, we're bringing Shabbat into the week.
Excellent. You read ahead, didn't you?
Yeah. I want to get there, and that would be the idea, is to maintain the completely, which the week is saturated with Shabbat and it has.
Excellent. That's right. So therefore, based on that, the Al-Ken al-Yidei Lashon HaKodesh mekusha l'Shabbat. So therefore, now he says this concept of Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue, mekusha l'Shabbat, it's linked to Shabbat. Al-Ken al-Yidei Shleimut HaDibur shehu b'chirat Lashon HaKodesh. So here it says this idea that when the holy tongue is connected to Shabbat, and that is connected to the actual Lashon HaKodesh, what happens? We can now bring in this happiness, the simcha of Shabbat, into the 6 weekdays, which you just said. What's your name again? I'm sorry. Ira. So that idea, now what we're going to try to bring into this is like this. And we're about to learn this right now. It's going to go into very interesting concepts and ideas that are very deep. But just so you understand, this concept of Shabbat, what is really considered the ultimate joy a person can have? We know that specifically the highest level of joy is when you're connected to Hashem. It's much better than driving a Ferrari or living in a penthouse or any of those things that materialistic stuff. True happiness, more than anything else, is just getting close to Hashem. What is the ultimate gain time zone that you can do this? The highest level is Shabbat, right? There's no obstacles in the way of trying to get close to Hashem on Shabbat, right? So therefore, what does that mean? If we have the concept of Lashon HaKodesh, which is connected with bracha and kedusha, which you connected it to Shabbat, and the idea of Shabbat is connected with the concept of joy, we know that now Lashon HaKodesh has something connected now with Simcha, with joy. Okay, that's like the mechanism. So now Rabbi Nachman tries to bring that proof down in an amazing way. And we're going to learn something very out there, but work with me. Ki yemei hachol hem bechinat atzvut. Rabbi Nachman says the weekdays are the concept of gloominess, of depression, of sadness. If Shabbat is happiness, right? He's saying you the weekdays there has this level of sadness, depression, gloominess. Even the mitzvahs that we perform throughout the week, they have this quality of heaviness. It's heavy on you. Now, in another chapters, Rabbi Nachman talks about this, that throughout the week, you are affected by this concept called the bite of the snake. The bite of the snake, which pollutes you, and the snake is, where does a snake come from? From the ground, from the dust, which is what? Heaviness. Oh, waking up. Oh, I got to do this thing. Oh, everything is just like hard to do, right? That's that concept of the serpent, right? And the serpent can get you in other ways as well, right? The serpent is also connected with a Yetzer Hara. It can make you do a lot of bad sins, etc. But that's what literally these klipot, these evil forces, stick on you throughout the weekday on a high level. On Shabbat, they can't interfere with you. Okay, which is a very interesting idea. Even more so. So now Rabbi Nachman says, and this is a big idea. Ki metat shel tenute b'mei hachol. Okay, he says the weekdays, Sunday through Friday, they are ruled by metat. Who's metat? So the Tikkunei Zohar talks about this. There is the top dog angel of all angels. His name is Metat. And as crazy as it sounds, it is what it is. Hashem literally lets Metat run the world.
Who is Metat?
Good question. Why are you asking? So hold on, it'll come to me right now. Give me 1 second. It's No. Enoch. Hanoch. He is Metat. He was the man version that came down as a human as Metat in this world. But the Zohar is very specific. Hashem, so to speak, under his auspices, I want to be clear, gives the keys to Metat to run the show throughout the week. On Shabbat, Metat's not involved. Hashem runs the show. Now, it's not to say that Hashem doesn't run the show, but and again, how can we understand what that means on the highest of levels? We don't understand. But the Tikkunei Zohar is very clear, and this is across the board in all aspects of rabbinic literature. Metat runs the Sunday through Friday, which is very interesting. Okay, now, based on the idea that Metat represents the weekdays, okay, Rabbi Nachman now says, based on that, Umetatu bechinat eved, bechinat atzvut. One of the ways that they call Metat, they call him a servant. Why? Because he's Hashem's servant. He's an angel that Hashem tells him, you got the keys to the car, so to speak, but you listen to what I tell you to do, right? servant, weekdays, that represents this concept of gloominess, of sadness, right? Why? Because when you're a servant, it's not like, yay, I'm a servant. Like it's hard, right? And sometimes it's tough. And sometimes I don't want to listen to the person, but you have to do it, right? You're a servant. So with that idea, with that concept, Rabbi Nachman's telling you so far, Shabbat equals simcha. Weekdays is gloominess. It can be sadness and depression. That's included in the weekdays. How do we know that? Because Metat, who is called in the Torah, is called a servant, right? And being a servant is like a sign of sadness and depression. It's not fun, okay? But then Rabbi Nachman says, but Shabbat, about Shabbat, hu bechinat ben. So if weekdays are the servant idea, then Shabbat is this idea of ben. What's a ben? A son. Benmeleh, son of a king. This idea of the son, who would you rather be? You want to be im, we say this in Rosh Hashanah, im ke'avanim in kavadim. We're like children to Hashem, or we're like also like servants to Hashem. Which one do you want to be? Yeah. So why is Shabbat called Ben? So Rabbi Nachman says, so he says, there is this concept of rest for those above, meaning in Shemaim, when Shabbat comes, there's this massive amount of rest in the upper skies. Beneath Orer Simcha. And with that above and then below, there's an incredible amount of happiness, an incredible amount of joy. So he says, based upon that idea, that Nirut Orer Simcha, what happens on Shabbat? Joy is awakened. When there is rest, when you take a vacation, is it happiness? No.
Vacation is the worst.
Okay, so by the way, someone just said here, vacation is the worst. Okay, well listen, some people, their vacation is doing nothing and they're happy.
Happiness is when you go 9 to 5. When you let you home,
beautiful. All right, guys, don't worry about that one. Okay, guys over here. Rabbi Nachman says, when Shabbat comes, upstairs in Shemaim, happiness. Here, happiness. Why? Because there is rest. And when there is rest, there's happiness, there's joy. What happens? All of the mitzvahs that you did throughout those 6 weekdays, on Shabbat, they are lifted up and they're raised out of this wording called the atfu, this gloominess and the heaviness. Meaning Shabbat was able to break all those klipot, all those evil forces that were literally pushing down all the prayers that you were doing that did not descend up on high. Shabbat, so to speak, clears it. Okay? One more thing I didn't mention before. We brought it up. What's your name again? I'm sorry? Eitan. I'm going to call you Green Light. So Chanoch was the human version of Matot. Yes? There's another angel that also, so to speak, became a man. Right? And also you have to be very careful. You can't really say these angels' names out loud. It's kind of a problem. I didn't say Matot, I didn't say his full name. Okay? So there's another one that says Sandal. I can't even say the full name. He came down, and who did he come down as eventually? It was Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay? Eliyahu Hanavi, this is very cool. Eliyahu Hanavi, if you look at sometimes how they call him in the Chumash, in the text of the prophets, they call him Aleph Lamed Yud Hey. Okay, that's how they spell it, Eliyahu. So if you put Eliyahu Gematria plus Matot, you put those letters together, which equal numbers. Are you familiar with Gematrias? Yeah. Yes? You put those two together, it equals the word kol. Kuf Lamed, Kuf Vav Lamed. The word kol means what? Voice. it's brought down that these guys, these two angels, they're the ones, so to speak, that are helping trying to get the prayers to get up there from everybody, right? So when you're saying also like on days of fast days or in Rosh Hashanah, Shema Koleinu, Kol, you're also, so to speak, chizuking them, these specific angels, to help lift up these prayers up on a higher level. Okay? Now, based upon that, let's go back. So now we said that when Shabbat comes around, all this heaviness and all the mitzvahs that we did throughout the week, they're raised out of this gloominess and their heaviness. And then Rabbi Nachman says, based on that, V'nimshach aleichem menucha v'simcha, which is a very famous song that we sing, Menucha v'simcha. Now, we got a singer, by the way, here, guys. He's going to be rocking it out very soon. He's going to bring the guitar, the whole 9 yards. So, Menucha v'simcha, this is the idea. Now, they are filled with menucha, with rest and joy. And then he brings you a beautiful pasuk. He says, Bebechinat vayoled ben vayikra shmo Noach. There's a pasuk in the story of Noach. Okay? I had a source sheet here. Unfortunately, we couldn't print it. It would have been nice and clear as you would see it. Unfortunately, the printer didn't come out with all of it. But that specific pasuk said, let's look at it together because it's very important as he's trying to bring you a point. Vayoled ben vayikra shmo Noach. You see the word ben, which means son? Do you guys see that? Yeah. Okay. In the same pasuk, we see the word. What's the ben's name? Noach. What did ben represent? Shabbos, which equals what? Rest. What was the name of the ben? Noach. What is Noach? What's the wording of Noach? Noach also means rest, right? Rabbi Nachman's bringing you that pasuk to show you, to like proof test it, like bam. Just look at this. Ze yenachamenu mimasenu umiitzvon yadenu. As it continues and it says, what happens at the continuing the pasuk? The father says, this one is going to bring us relief from our work, and from the itzvon, the toil of our hands. Itzvon comes from the word atzvut, which means atzvut is gloominess, depression. So you see, based on look how amazing that is. That pasuk, which is really not, and we say in Spanish, nada que ver, right? With what? Yeah, I see you right there. Yeah. my Latin people over here. But the idea behind that is, you look at this pasuk. It doesn't. Ben, we just learned, deals with Shabbat. Noach specifically deals with rest. It says, it continues in the pasuk in that book of Bereshit. This one's going to bring us relief from work, which means what? The 6 days of the week, and from the itzvon, from the gloominess. The toil of their hands is the wording in Bereshit, but itzvon comes from the same word atzvot, from the depression. Beautiful. So then Rabbi Nachman continues based on that. Chayinu bechinat Shabbat shebechinat ben. And therefore we see the Shabbat, which is that concept of ben, bebechinat Noach, that concept of Noach, naicha dialayin betayin. Noach represents, as you just mentioned, nach, naicha. Naicha means rest. Dialayin betatayin. For those above, in Shemaim, when Shabbat happens, there's rest above. Betatayin, and below in this world. That's what this comes from the Zohar. And therefore, he relieves and cheers all of these from the gloominess, from the sadness. This one is going to bring us relief. So you see how Rabbi Nachman took a beautiful idea from the story of Noach and literally explained it based upon what he's trying, the message that he's trying to actually tell you. So Rabbi Nachman now continues and he says, when a person merits the holy tongue, which I remember one time, how do you merit the holy tongue? By speaking words of Torah, by davening, by praying to Hashem. And here's the big one: no curse words, no lashon hara. Lashon hara. All of these are the opposites of Lashon HaKodesh. So therefore, shehu mekasher l'Shabbat, as we spoke about, it's connected to Shabbat. Azay mamshichin ayado et kedusha vehasimcha sheshabbat l'sheshet yemei hakol. What happens? He brings down the kedusha, the sanctity and the joy of Shabbos to be drawn into the 6 days of the week. You want to tap into that holiness of Shabbat, start focusing on Lashon HaKodesh. By the way, not an easy thing to do. I'm not telling you this is like, automatic. I'm going to say something else shortly after I finish this paragraph. And that's because the holy tongue is connected to Shabbat. And through the Shabbos joy that's channeled into the 6 days, the weekdays, through him. Now look at this. He says, now, for those that were here for my 2 weeks ago class, we spoke about these 3 names of Hashem. It was a pasuk. Kel is one of the names of Hashem. Elokim is another name of Hashem. And Yud Kei Vav Kei. Those 3 names of Hashem were the 3 names of Hashem that shines a light of truth into communication. The pasuk in Tehillim says, Kel, Elokim, Hashem, and the word is Diber. The bear means to speak. So Rabbi Nachman says, if you take the 3 names of Hashem, Kel, Elokim, and Yud Kei Vav Kei, Diber, you put those all together in Gematria, what does it equal? Mispar Simcha. Meaning, which is amazing, if you think about it, if you add up all of them, including the kolo, meaning if you add up you add all the gematrias of every single one of those names I just said, Kel, Elokim, and Yud Kei Vav Kei, and you add the words, and Diber, you add the words, 4 words, add them all up together, that equals Simcha, the same gematria. Which means what? Which means that when a person is speaking truth and emet, and it's coming from Hashem, that's Simcha. That is joy. Logically, if a person is focused on Torah learning and doing all the things I mentioned to you that literally fall under the same umbrella of Lashon HaKodesh, that can actually bring joy to a person. Because this concept of perfection of speech, which is the first thing we start off in today's class, shleimus Lashon HaKodesh, nimshach simcha. That is the way through the Lashon HaKodesh that brings joy. So now Rabbi Nachman, now we're continuing on, and I'm sorry here for all you guys following online. If you were following online, I was not being a good boy and I did not move along with you. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. Hi. By the way, also something very interesting. Yeah, I need to. I wish I had my source sheets. Can you open up the email? Amazing idea. There's a pasuk that says in the Gemara that a person without a wife is living without simcha. That's in the Gemara. Hold on. I'm so sorry. They're throwing tomatoes at me, guys. I'm so sorry. Hurry up, guys. Okay, no. So I want to read something to you. Oh, wait, this is not the right one. This one right here is class sources. Look at this. Amazing. And we're going to learn, again, what's really cool about Rabbi Nachman is like, you take one idea and then you can use different words and connect the dot with other concepts and ideas, and you see how it's all connected. I'm going to show you an example. And again, we had these, if you had to print it out, you would look at it and be like, this is amazing. So the Talmud says, this is the quote. This is in Masechet Yevamot. Any man who has no wife lives without joy, without blessing, and without goodness. Okay? Now, there's a pasuk. We know that the wife represents this concept of dibur, of speech. How do we know that? Because in Tehillim, there's a pasuk that says, Yom le'yom yagia, sorry, Yom le'yom yabia omer, ve'layla le'layla yechave da'at. Very good. right? Which means in English, day to day makes utterances, night to night speaks out. The key word is yechaveh, means to speak. What's the root word of yechaveh? Chava. Who's Chava? The first woman, right? And what did we just speak about? Speaking. Yechaveh, speech. So therefore, the concept of yechaveh, which means to speak, chava means woman, just like the woman, which is connected to speech, gives you happiness. So true Lashon HaKodesh also gives you happiness. You see how I went from here to here to here? Because we're talking about a woman gives you simcha. When we're speaking about the idea, let's go back one more time. In the actual pasuk itself, a man who has no wife lives without joy. That's the pasuk first. That's the Gemara. Okay. Then we said that the idea based upon the pasuk in Tehillim, that woman, yechav, which also means speech, right? So there it says specifically that if you know that the woman gives you happiness, and therefore yechaveh means speech also. So you based upon that, you're plugging and playing. So speech, Lashon HaKodesh, also gives you happiness, which is what we're talking about here. Remember that Lashon HaKodesh, used under the opposites of what we're talking about, gives you simcha. It's just the same idea. You're playing with these psukim.
Don't you feel that's because a person is not having negative speech, negative thoughts, negativity? Because if it's Lashon HaKodesh, it needs to be like on the purest, highest level.
So you're saying that you wouldn't have any negativity because of that, right?
Would you?
We learned in last week's, 2 weeks ago class, we also said something very interesting. We said that this is from the concept of the 10 sayings. It said that women took 9 sayings and man got 1, which makes sense because women talk a lot too. Sucks to be you. But listen, no, but in general, we know that, right? It's a known thing that the woman in general deals with speech and needs to release and speak to the husband. It's a very well-known thing. This is not something new. Okay? So the idea, it says though specifically that the man is not a complete person. He doesn't have those, he only has 1 of the speech. He needs 9. He has to connect with the 9 to have full speech, complete shlema speech. Same thing with the woman though. She's at 9. She needs that 1. She also doesn't have complete speech. Shlemas of speech. What shlemas of speech means on an individual level is a different question. Okay? But that goes with that same concept, that same idea. Okay. Now, Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, we're now in Vav. When a person draws that sanctity of Shabbat into the 6 days of the week, what happens? You are now bringing this concept of the simple unity of Hashem to be revealed. One more thing I wanted to say to you, that there are other books. If we finish this chapter, guys, for also you here, when we finish this chapter, there's another book called Likutey Halachot. Likutey Halachot is Reb Nassan of Breslov. And what he does is he takes this high level of understanding of Rabbi Nachman's Torahs and he brings it down to give you more practical advice. How do I do Lashon HaKodesh in that manner? How can I bring in Shabbat on that level? Okay, he takes all that. Likutei Tefillot, which are all Rabbi Nassan's prayers on these Torahs. You want to know how to do that? You see Rabbi Nassan praying his heart out. You look at all the words, how to adapt these lessons and how to bring it home, and you speak to Hashem about it. It's unbelievable stuff. So right now we're learning more loftier ideas, but to bring it down on a lower level, you got to go through Likutei Halachot, which is something I think I'd love to do at the end of this chapter and really go through it. One of the ways I will tell you right now, and now it's something that's in my mind because I've learned the Likutei Halachot a little bit about this. When we do at the end of the day, Hashir Shel Yom Shel Shabbos, right? And every day in Shacharit. Hayom, you say today is Sunday. Today is Monday. The Monday of Shabbos, right? We say that. That part, Rabbi Nassan says, that's how you're infusing, so to speak, Shabbos into your weekday. Now, there's a difference between me just saying it and actually consciously thinking about it. Because when you're constantly thinking about it, like, oh, okay, this is an actual real mechanism that can actually draw that light down. But just something more of a consciousness you have to think about. We have another probably 5 more minutes. So now Rabbi Nachman says, so we talk about the idea of the simple unity that's going to be revealed on Shabbos. These 6 days of the week, there's this concept of, he calls it peulot mishtanot. Here it's diverse phenomena, which really means like a variety. Like on a weekday, it's not the concept of oneness. Like Shabbat is like oneness. The weekdays is this concept of variety, many, the opposite of oneness. Shebechol yom nibra peula meshuna, because on every single day, a different phenomenon was created. We know when the world was created, every single day, something new was created that day. If we look at the book of Breshit, right? And that's the idea regarding this concept of diverse phenomena, of variety. And he says, based on that all this variety that comes from Hashem, the Blessed One, the Exalted One, and his simple unity, he says like this: it runs counter to human reasoning and it defies comprehension. The human mind cannot understand this. How is it possible that from one should come a variety? How the mind doesn't imagine everything is one, but no, but it's really not one. No, it's many. We're made to believe that because there's a veil and we live in a world of like, Hashem makes it like there's a veil, we think that we are, so to speak, God's not here, so to speak. We don't understand that. We don't see him, right? So there's not a concept of unity. Everything is all fragmented. Like what happened to you, whatever happened to you today, right? We're gonna go, well, that's what Hashem wanted today. How often do we think that? Maybe some people do. I don't know. But are you thinking about, how often are you thinking about the unity, the oneness of Hashem? That's our job. Like our job is actually to make the unity of Hashem be revealed in this world. That's why when we do the prayers in the morning, I know the Ashkenazim, I don't think they do it, but Sephardic for sure do it in Chabad. These are the Shemechut Kutsha Brichu, right? When you're connecting the concept of the upper Hashem with the Shekhinah below, right? This concept of the ultimate unity. We're constantly trying to unify things, right? And by unifying things, essentially you're bringing the oneness of Hashem out to the world. That is our job. But we live in this fragmented, so to speak, and the wording, again, they use it here, it's diverse phenomena, right? Where Hashem has to do that to give you free will. He has to give you that free will. So that's why the world looks weird. But Rabbi Nachman is just saying, it's like, we can't understand it. How does it go from like one and now everything's all split? We can't. Or even it's brought down into the notes and different commentators here. Even the tzaddikim, they kind of have a clue how it works, but even and they could probably grasp it for just a little bit of time, and then they can't. It's very hard for them. And here's the last paragraph. We'll finish with this. Rak al-yedei Shabbat she'anu zochin she'natan lanu Hashem yitbarach matana gedolah. However, through Shabbat, the great gift that God gave us, as our sages said, matana toba yeshli bebeit genazai v'Shabbat shema, is from a pasuk in the Gemara. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I have a precious gift in my treasure house. What's the name? Shabbat is her name. He tells Moshe, go tell him about this gift. What is that? The simple unity is revealed. What does Shabbat do? Ki Shabbat mora al emunah tayichud. Shabbat teaches about emunah, about faith in Hashem's oneness. That our belief, that we believe that this whole diverse variety of things, it comes from Hashem's simple unity. That v'Shabbat. And therefore he says, and he created all these ideas of different phenomena throughout the 6 weekdays, and then eventually he made the concept of Shabbat to stop that, so to speak. And then through Shabbat, through Shabbat, God's simple unity is revealed. The question I'm going to ask is, how does that happen? Can anybody this is more of a question to everybody. How do we see, obviously, Shabbat showing you Hashem's simple unity? It's a question. I'm throwing it out there. Anybody wants to chime in?
Gets rid of the gloominess.
Okay. How does that make it unity? How is that unity?
So it seems like the Shabbat doesn't necessarily create joy. There's always joy and gloominess, and what it does is it gets rid of the gloominess, and you only see joy, and so it's the only thing you see.
Beautiful. Good.
What about
Slam dunk. Yeah.
Shabbos davening is like kind of only praising Kadosh Baruch Hu. We don't daven for yourself, so it's like kind of shows that, no?
If you're, because you're not. It's not about ourselves, right? It's about just Hashem, the unity of that. Beautiful. Good. And I would just say again, based upon the idea of it's a simple level. When next time you say Kiddush, right, and we say Vayakulu Hashemayim V'Aretz V'Chol Tzavam, right? You're talking about Hashem created everything, and on Shabbat, that's it. He rested. We don't work today. We don't do any acts of labor today. Why don't we do anything? Because obviously Hashem stopped doing everything. Why did he stop doing anything? Because it was a day of complete cessation, not only from everything, but that cessation, the idea of every day is like on a weekday, work. This thing, that thing. It's a lot of things. Shabbat is just like, that's it. We have arrived at the actual destination. We're here. It's only about me and Hashem. It's a concept of unity. It's very deep, but what am I, at the end of the day, we'll stop here for the actual text part, but what I want everybody just like as the simple take home, right? We could talk about these ideas and deep and the concepts are amazing and whatever, but the main idea is, number one, how much of consciousness do you have when you go into Shabbat? Do you think, number one, Lashon HaKodesh? How often, what are you saying that's coming out of your mouth in Shabbat? Think about it. How often do you think about that? Are you in prayer Torah mode? Are you talking about nonsense? Are you talking about, like I said, we spoke about, God forbid, people have conversations in the dinner table. Are you talking about Lashon Hara? What happens if you're cursing? You got to think about those things as an example, right? Plus what all those things are, politics, sports, whatever. Be conscious about it, is what I'm getting at. And even more so, think about this concept, obviously, we just spoke about. Just the unity of Hashem. That is just me and Hashem, and I am literally living. He talks about this later on. I just want to say it's a beautiful idea. The next line, look what he says. This revelation of the simple unity, I know, oneness of Hashem, it's extremely precious, even to God. Hashem loves that you think like that you want to unify his name. Rabbi Nachman is not like some person, like he's a high-level tzaddik who ascends up in Shemayim and he gets a lot of Torah from up there. He's telling you it's extremely precious even to Hashem. You have to know that. Like it's not like whatever. Right? So you think about these things. It's a consciousness of how we need to think about when we're in Shabbat. And finally, the last part is, based upon the fact that we just explained before through different psukim, proving it all out, Shabbat equals simcha. Shabbat is happiness, like a son, like a ben, not like an eved on a weekday, right? We're not trying to be in that mode, right? But we have to know that if that's the case, and if we connected all to Lashon HaKodesh, how do we infuse that simcha throughout the week into your weekdays? By speaking Lashon HaKodesh, by davening, by praying, by hibodedut, by staying on that course and staying away from Lashon Hara, curse words, and all those other things. And you do all that, B'ezrat Hashem, you can go into the Shabbat, B'ezrat Hashem, in a different consciousness mode, which is essentially really the biggest point of everything. With that, we finish tonight's class.
I was taught was taught that was always good. And when our better days turned into a craze, I did the best that I could.